Chloe called me out for smelling bad, right there in front of 200 people at her wedding. I barely had time to react before Uncle Richard, her dad, walked over, pulled a crumpled 100 out of his pocket and pressed it into my hand. "Go buy yourself a better suit," he said, grinning, "and maybe some stronger deodorant." Everyone roared. They loved it. Their weird cousin Elia's the family joke. What a story. That $100, that was my first real investment. I used it to start their downfall. If you stick with me, I'll tell you exactly how I took everything from them. No guns, no fists, just a whisper here, a file there, and a whole lot of patience. This isn't a story about forgiveness. It's about payback. The actual moment was over fast. Chloe floated over in her white dress, all silk and tulle, doing her rounds. She stopped at my lonely little table in the back near the kitchen doors. No +1. I was supposed to bring someone, but she bailaid that morning. I'd driven 5 hours in a car with busted AC, sweating through July. I knew I wasn't fresh. I tried to fix up in a grimy gas station bathroom. It didn't work. "Elia's," Chloe said, wrinkling her nose just enough for everyone to see. "You made it." She made sure her voice carried. The tables nearby turned to listen. "I'm honestly shocked you own a suit." I smiled, wouldn't miss it. She glanced at the sweat on my collar. "You look warm." Her friend next to her snorted. Then Chloe leaned in, fake whispering loud enough for the crowd. "You know, Elia's, they actually sell stuff for that, for the scent." The room went quiet. Then Uncle Richard boomed in, face flushed from champagne, clapping me on the shoulder so hard my teeth rattled. "There's my hard-working nephew, Chloe, cut him some slack. Not everyone gets custom suits in Central Air." He winked at the crowd, then fished out that bill. "Here, son, wedding present in reverse. Get yourself something decent, and some decent antiperspirant for God's sake." The laughter hit me like a shove. I looked at Richard's big grin, Chloe's smug little smirk. Aunt Brenda was shaking with silent laughter at a nearby table, hiding her mouth behind her hand. I took the 100. My hand didn't shake. I just folded it and slipped it into my pocket. That was their mistake. They wanted a show. They wanted me embarrassed, angry, crawling. I gave them nothing. I let it all vanish behind my eyes, but the humiliation didn't disappear. It settled deep and cold. It grew roots. I slipped out an hour later. No one noticed. 5 hours on the highway back home, just me and the sound of hot air blasting out of the broken vents. I didn't even bother with music. The silence was good. It let my thoughts settle. The sting of the night faded from burning to something heavier, something sharp and solid, something I could actually use. All my life I'd been their afterthought. Elia's the quiet cousin, the one who went to state school, the one with the boring job sorting old papers in a basement. They measured me by what I didn't have: the car, the apartment, the pedigree, the ring. Their money was everything. Their status kept them safe. They couldn't imagine any of it could ever be at risk, and they definitely couldn't imagine someone like me could ever touch them. I started seeing their lives like a building. Uncle Richard's business, the foundation. Aunt Brenda's reputation, those were the walls. Chloe's perfect marriage, that was the roof everyone admired. If I wanted them to feel what I felt, I couldn't just throw a rock through a window. I had to pull the whole thing down, brick by brick, slow enough that by the time they realized, they'd already be standing in the rubble. And they'd never see me coming. The quiet one. The one who stank at the wedding. When I finally made it back to my cramped apartment, the sun was already up. I put the $100 bill on my desk and smoothed it out as best I could. It looked small, kind of sad, but it was a start. Seed money, a promise. My job is to be meticulous. As a municipal archivist, I work with forgotten history. I organize land deeds from the 19th century, council meeting minutes, forgotten zoning applications. I find patterns in the dust. I connect disparate pieces of information to form a coherent narrative. My mind is trained to see the structure beneath the surface. I decided to apply my professional skills to a personal project. The project of my family's ruin. I spent the next 2 weeks not on a plan of action, but on a plan of research. I bought a new laptop and a burner phone with the $100 my uncle had given me. I used public library Wi-Fi networks. I created anonymous email addresses. I was a ghost in the machine. I started with Richard's company, Sterling Construction. It was his life's work. He built it from the ground up. He was proud of it. He was also reckless. His company's website was a monument to his ego. It listed all his major projects. It had press releases boasting about future developments. I read every single one. I cross-referenced the project names with public records on the city planning department's website. I was an expert at navigating these databases. It was my home turf. I found it on the third night, a massive planned luxury condo development called Riverbend Estates. The press release was full of Richard's usual bluster, a new standard in luxury living, transforming the waterfront. The project was enormous. It was also entirely dependent on a single upcoming city council vote to rezone a piece of industrial wasteland for residential use. Richard had bought the land for cheap. If the rezoning passed, its value would increase 100-fold overnight. If it failed, he would be ruined. He had leveraged everything against this one vote. He was arrogant. He was certain. I had found the cornerstone of the foundation. Now I needed to find a crack. The details of the rezoning application were public record. I downloaded the entire file. Hundreds of pages of environmental impact statements, traffic studies, and architectural plans. I read it all. Most of it was boilerplate, standard procedure, but my work had taught me to read the margins, to look for what was not there. The environmental report was thin. It was conducted by a firm I had never heard of. A quick search revealed the firm was new, and its founder was a college friend of my uncle. The report concluded that the land, a former chemical processing site, was perfectly safe for residential development. It mentioned a few trivial contaminants, all well below the legal limits. It seemed clean, too clean. I spent a weekend at the archives, not on city time. I pulled the historical files for that specific parcel of land. It took me hours digging through dusty, undigitized records, and there it was, a file from the 1970s, a report from a factory that had long since closed. It detailed a chemical spill, a significant one. The chemical was a rare industrial solvent. It was not something modern environmental tests would even look for unless they were specifically told to. The old report had been buried, forgotten, but not gone. I had found it. The foundation had a crack. It was a deep one. I did not go to the press. That would be too fast, too loud. It might even be traced back to me. My revenge needed to be a slow poison, not a sudden blow. I needed to create an opposition that seemed organic, natural. I used my burner phone to create a new online identity, a concerned citizen, a retired schoolteacher named Martha. I created a simple website, a blog. It was called Protect Our Riverfront. I wrote a few posts about the beauty of the local river, the importance of green spaces. The language was gentle, nostalgic. Then I wrote the post about the Riverbend Estates project. I did not mention the chemical spill directly. Instead, I raised questions. I posted scans of old newspaper articles about the industrial history of the area. I wrote, "Many of us remember the factories that used to line our river. They provided jobs, but they also left a legacy. Are we sure we have done our due diligence before we build homes for our children on that same land?" I created a social media page for the group. I spent $20 of Richard's money on targeted ads aimed at people in the specific city council district, people who were interested in environmental causes in local history. The response was slow at first, a few likes, a few comments, but then a local blogger and environmental activist found my page. He wrote a piece about it. He called my anonymous persona a lone voice of reason. He had a decent following. The spark had caught. The Protect Our Riverfront group grew. People started their own research. Someone found the connection between Richard and the environmental testing firm. They posted it on the group's page. The narrative began to build. This was not just a development project. It was a backroom deal, a rich developer trying to pull a fast one. The week before the city council vote, I took the next step. I created a new anonymous email. I sent an email to the activist blogger and to the chief of staff for the most progressive member of the city council. The email was short. It said, "You are missing the real story. Check the municipal archives for industrial spill reports from 1978, Parcel 7B. I did not include the document. I just gave them the location. I made them do the work. It gave the discovery legitimacy. 2 days later, the blogger published his bombshell article. Buried report shows toxic history of proposed luxury condo site. The city council member called for a delay in the vote and a new, independent environmental review. The vote was postponed indefinitely. The news sent a shockwave through the local business community. Richard's project was dead in the water. His financing was tied to a strict timeline. The delay triggered penalty clauses. He was bleeding money every single day. On the news, I saw him giving a statement. His face was a mask of fury. He blamed irresponsible activists and political grandstanding. He had no idea the person responsible was his own nephew. The person he thought was too stupid and too poor to matter. The first crack in the foundation was now a gaping hole. My Aunt Brenda lived for her reputation. Her life was a carefully curated collection of charity luncheons, gallery openings, and mentions in the society column of the local paper. Her primary role was as the chairperson of the board for the Westbrook Children's Foundation, a prominent local charity. It gave her status. It gave her a purpose. It made her feel important. It was the next target. Brenda was not a thief. She was something more common. She was wasteful. She saw the charity's money as a tool to enhance her own social life. I began my research the same way. I went to the source. The foundation's annual reports were public. I read through 5 years of them. The numbers told a story. The foundation raised a lot of money, but its administrative and fundraising costs were astronomical. I saw the patterns. Every year, the main fundraising event was a lavish gala. The catering costs were obscene. The venue fees were exorbitant. The galas looked impressive. They got Brenda's picture in the paper, but they barely broke even. Sometimes they even lost money. The foundation was treading water, surviving on its endowment, while Brenda and her committee played party planners with donor money. This was not illegal, but it was not a good look. It was a weakness. I needed to get the information out there, but not in a way that pointed to a single source. Whispers are more powerful than shouts. I compiled my findings into a simple, clear document, a spreadsheet. I highlighted the gala costs versus the net proceeds. I included links to the public reports. The facts spoke for themselves. Brenda had a social rival, a woman named Margaret. Brenda had beaten her out for the chairperson position 3 years ago. The defeat had been bitter. Margaret was still on the board. She was ambitious and patient. She was the perfect vessel. I created another anonymous email address. The persona this time was a concerned lower-level employee of the foundation. I sent the spreadsheet to Margaret. The email was simple. For your information, some of us are worried about the foundation's direction. The numbers do not lie. I knew Margaret would know what to do. She would not release the information publicly. That would damage the foundation she hoped to one day lead. She would use it strategically. She would share it with a few key board members. She would let the information spread quietly, a slow-acting poison in the well of Brenda's reputation. The change was not immediate. It was a slow freeze, a phone call not returned, an invitation that never arrived. Brenda noticed something was wrong, but she could not figure out what it was. At board meetings, she was met with polite but firm questions. Questions about the budget, about the fundraising efficiency. Questions she could not answer adequately. The whispers grew louder. Did you hear about the gala? They spent $50,000 on ice sculptures and only cleared $10,000 for the kids. The story mutated as gossip does. The narrative shifted. Brenda was no longer seen as a savvy socialite leading a great cause. She was seen as wasteful, incompetent, out of touch. The final blow came during the annual board retreat. Margaret, armed with the support of a majority of the board, called for a vote of no confidence. It passed. Brenda was asked to step down as chairperson. The news was humiliatingly public. The same Society columnist who once praised her now wrote a thinly veiled piece about the foundation, seeking new leadership to improve fiscal responsibility. Brenda was shattered. Her entire identity was tied to that role. She lost her title. She lost her friends. She lost her purpose. She stayed home for weeks. The walls of her perfect house were now a prison, and she had no one to blame but a vague sense of betrayal from people she thought were her friends. She never once considered that the architect of her downfall was the nephew she had laughed at for his cheap suit. 2 down, 1 to go, Chloe. My cousin who had delivered the initial blow. Her punishment needed to be personal. She had not married for love, she had married for a lifestyle. Her husband, Gregory, was a wealth manager from an old money family. He was handsome, charming, and he gave Chloe everything she wanted. A big house, a European car, a closet full of designer clothes. Their marriage was a brand. The perfect, successful young couple. I suspected it was as hollow as the rest of their lives. I started digging into Gregory. He was more careful than Richard. His finances were private, but everyone has a digital footprint. I looked at his social media, not his public profiles, but his tagged photos, his friends' accounts. I built a map of his life, the golf clubs, the restaurants, the weekend trips. And I found the pattern, the frequent trips to Atlantic City, the photos with a group of men who were known high-stakes gamblers, the offhand comments about a big win or a bad beat. It was there, hidden in plain sight. Gregory did not just like to play cards. He had a problem, a serious one. Wealth managers are not supposed to have gambling problems. It is a fatal flaw. I was sure he had hidden the extent of it from Chloe. She would never marry a man with that kind of liability. Finding the problem was one thing. Proving it and using it was another. I needed to get inside his financial world. This was the most difficult part of my plan. It required a different kind of infiltration. I used a private investigator. It cost me nearly all the money I had saved over the past year. I paid him in cash, using a proxy. I gave him a name, Gregory, and a list of his regular haunts. I told the Pi I was a business partner considering a venture with him and needed to know if he was reliable. It was a thin pretext, but it was enough. The Pi was good. He was discreet. It took him a month. The report he gave me was a detailed portrait of a man in a secret panic. Gregory was not just gambling. He was losing. He had debts to private bookmakers. He was using his clients' funds to cover his losses, shuffling money around in a desperate attempt to stay afloat until his next big score. He was committing financial fraud. He was one bad bet away from total collapse. Chloe was sleeping next to a time bomb. I just needed to light the fuse. The plan had to be subtle. I could not just send the Pi's report to Chloe. Gregory would deny it. He would call it a fabrication. I needed him to expose himself. I learned from the Pi's report which online betting site Gregory used most often. I also learned the name of his primary bookie. The bookie was old school. He operated on reputation and fear. First, I created a fake email that looked like a notification from the betting site. It was a sophisticated phishing attempt. It congratulated Gregory on a fictitious $10,000 win in a poker tournament he had not entered. It said the funds were credited to his account. It was a psychological trick. The sudden injection of fake hope would make him reckless. It would make him feel lucky. Second, I used a voice-altering app on my burner phone. I called his bookie. I identified myself as a colleague of Gregory. I said, "I just wanted to let you know that Greg's family is about to give him a major cash infusion for a real estate investment. He should be good for a much higher line of credit if he needs it." The bookie, smelling an opportunity to let his debtor dig a deeper hole, would be happy to oblige. I had baited the trap. Now I just had to wait for Gregory to walk into it. He did. The Pi confirmed it a week later. Gregory, buoyed by his win and his newly expanded credit with his bookie, made a series of massive bets on a European soccer match. He lost all of them. The $10,000 of fake winnings vanished, and he was now in debt for a catastrophic amount to a very dangerous man. The bookie called his markers. Gregory had no way to pay. The threats started, first on the phone, then in person. A brick through his car window, a visit at his office. Gregory panicked. He tried to pull more money from his clients' accounts, but his partners at the firm noticed the irregularities. They launched an internal audit. The entire scheme unraveled in less than 72 hours. Gregory was fired. He was facing federal charges. The bookie, wanting to get paid before the government seized all of Gregory's assets, went to the one place he knew he could apply pressure. He went to the house. He went to Chloe. I will never know exactly what was said in that conversation, but I know the result. Chloe's perfect life, her perfect husband, her perfect marriage, all of it dissolved in a single afternoon of terrifying revelation. The screaming matches were loud enough for the neighbors to hear. She found out about the debt, the gambling, the fraud. She found out her entire life was a lie, funded by stolen money and desperate risks. Her brand was toxic. The roof of their beautiful house had caved in, and it was raining fire. While all of this was happening, my own life continued. I went to work every day. I filed my documents. I ate my lunch at my desk. On the surface, nothing had changed, but I had changed. The anger that had fueled me was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, quiet focus, a sense of purpose. I did not feel joy when I read about Brenda's resignation in the paper. I did not feel triumph when I heard through my mother about Richard's financial troubles. I did not feel pleasure when she told me Chloe had left Gregory and moved back home. I just felt a sense of order, of a task being completed, a record being corrected. I took the money I had been saving and invested it, not in stocks, but in myself. I took online courses in digital forensics and data analysis. My skills grew. I started a small side business. I helped people find lost relatives or research their family histories using my archival skills. It was successful in a small way. It brought me a quiet satisfaction that my revenge did not. My mother worried about me. She saw me one evening looking at my laptop. She put her hand on my shoulder. "Elias," she said, "you seem so distant lately, so cold. Whatever is going on with Brenda and Richard, I hope you are not taking any pleasure in it." I looked up at her. "It's just family drama, Mom." "Revenge doesn't fix what's broken inside you," she said softly. "It just makes the hole bigger." I knew she was right, but I was in too deep. I had one more piece to put in place. The foundation was cracked. The walls were down. The roof had collapsed. But the rubble was still there. I needed to clear the lot. Thanksgiving was at my mother's house that year. It was a small affair, just my mother and me. Brenda, Richard, and Chloe had been invited. My mother, in her endless capacity for forgiveness, felt sorry for them. They declined. But 2 weeks before Christmas, my Aunt Brenda called. Her voice was thin, brittle. She asked if she, Richard, and Chloe could come over for dinner, just a simple dinner. She said they needed to talk. My mother, of course, agreed. The evening was surreal. They arrived not in Richard's luxury sedan, but in a small, decade-old compact car. Their clothes were nice, but not new. The weight of the past year was etched on their faces. Richard's booming confidence was gone. He was stooped, silent. Brenda's eyes were puffy. Chloe looked like a ghost. She was thin and pale, her expensive handbag looking like a prop from a different life. They sat in my mother's modest living room, the same living room they had always implicitly mocked. They were awkward, uncomfortable. For the first hour, the conversation was stilted. They talked about the weather, about traffic, about anything but the gaping craters in their lives. Finally, after dinner, Richard cleared his throat. "Sarah," he said to my mother, "we are in trouble, real trouble." He explained that the business was on the verge of bankruptcy, that they were going to lose the house. He said he had one last chance, a private bridge loan. He just needed to secure it. He was asking my mother to co-sign the loan, using her own paid-off house as collateral. I sat there listening. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just the cold, clear thought, the final piece. My mother was a kind woman. I could see the conflict on her face. She looked at her sister, Brenda, whose face was streaked with tears. She looked at her brother-in-law, a man broken by his own hubris. It was Chloe who spoke to me. She found me in the kitchen as I was clearing the plates. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she whispered. Her voice was full of venom. I turned to face her. "Enjoying what, Chloe?" "All of it," she hissed. "Dad's business, Mom's friends, my marriage. It all went to hell right after my wedding, right after we made fun of you." I looked at her. Her eyes searched my face for any sign of guilt, of triumph. I gave her the same thing I gave her at the wedding. Nothing. "That's a lot of power to give me, Chloe," I said calmly. "I'm just an archivist." She shook her head. "No, you're not, you're something else." She was close, she could feel it, but it was impossible. The idea was too absurd. That quiet, pathetic Elias could have done all this. They were too arrogant to ever truly believe it. She had no proof, just a feeling, a suspicion. It was not enough. They dismissed it. They had to. The alternative, that their own cruelty had brought this upon them, was a truth too terrible for them to face. My mother did not agree to co-sign the loan that night. She told Richard she needed time to think. After they left, she came to me. "What do you think I should do, Elias?" "It's your house, Mom," I said. "It's your decision." "Don't do that," she said, her voice sharp. "Don't be neutral. I know you, Elias. Something has changed in you. This coldness, it started after that wedding. Talk to me." We sat in silence for a long time. I did not confess. I did not have to. She was my mother. She knew. Maybe not the details, but she knew the heart of it. "They were cruel to you, Elias," she said finally. "All your life, they belittled you. They belittled your father. They mocked our life. I know that. But whatever you are doing, it has to stop. Look what it's doing to you. Your father was a kind man. He never let their poison touch him. Don't let it turn you into them." Her words were the only thing in 2 years that had managed to get past my defenses. They were a crack in my own foundation. I felt a flicker of something, a doubt, a pang of something. I pushed it down. I was too close to the end. I had to see it through. The plan was all I had. Richard's last hope was a loan from a private equity firm. It was a loan with a predatory interest rate, but it was his only option. The loan officer in charge of his file was a man named David. I did not know David personally, but I knew someone who did. In my side business, I had done some genealogical research for a senior partner at a major law firm. He was a history buff. We had bonded over a shared interest in old maps. We had met for coffee a few times. He was well connected. During one of our conversations, he had mentioned that his nephew, David, had just started working at that same private equity firm. A small world, a useful connection. I did not have to do much. I called my contact at the law firm. I told him I was doing some professional research into Richard's company for a historical project. I asked if he knew anything about its stability. He said he would ask around. I knew who he would ask. He would ask his nephew. The question, coming from his powerful uncle, would put David on alert. It would make him look closer at Richard's application than he otherwise might have. It was a gentle nudge. The nudge was not enough. I needed to give David a reason to deny the loan. I needed to give him proof. I compiled a simple, anonymous package. It contained the news articles about the failed Riverbend project. It contained the Society column piece about Brenda's ousting from the charity board, implying fiscal mismanagement. It contained an article about Gregory's arrest for fraud, noting he was Richard's son-in-law. Individually, these were just unfortunate events. Together, they painted a picture of a family in a death spiral. A family surrounded by instability, scandal, and bad judgment. Not a family you give a multi-million-dollar loan to. I sent the package to David's office by courier. There was no note, no sender, just the documents, just the facts. I knew his uncle's inquiry would have made him cautious. This package would make him certain. 2 days later, my mother got a call from Brenda. The loan was denied. It was over. The business was officially bankrupt. The bank was foreclosing on the house. They had lost everything. The game was over. Checkmate. They moved into a small rental apartment in a town 30 miles away. The kind of apartment they would have driven past 1,000 times without ever noticing. Richard, a man who had once commanded teams of 100 workers, took a job as a handyman at an apartment complex. Brenda, who had once chaired charity galas, worked as a cashier at a grocery store. Chloe got a job as a waitress. They had to live the life they had always mocked. The life of ordinary, quiet work. The life they thought I was trapped in. They were stripped of their wealth, their status, their pride. All they had left was each other. And from what I heard, that was not much. The stress and resentment had corroded their relationships. They blamed each other. They fought constantly. They were living in the rubble. My mother tried to help them. She offered them money. They were too proud to take it. She would visit them and come back sad. She told me they were like strangers living in the same house. They rarely spoke. They just coexisted in their shared misery. They were completely and utterly broken, just as I had planned. I am sitting in my apartment. It is quiet. The work is done. My side business is growing. I have more money now than I ever have before. I have my work at the archives. My life is orderly. It is stable. It is empty. The cold focus that drove me for 2 years is gone. In its place, there is just silence, a vast, quiet emptiness. My mother was right. The revenge did not fill the hole inside me. It just hollowed it out more. I won. I destroyed them, but I feel no victory. They took my dignity, so I took their world. But what happens when you win a war and have to live alone in the silence? On my table is a letter. It is a wedding invitation. It is from a woman I work with at the archives. A kind woman, a friend. The wedding is in a month. It is a small ceremony at a local park. Hanging on my closet door is a suit. I bought it last week. It is not expensive. It is not custom tailored, but it is a good suit. It is navy blue. It fits me perfectly. I look at the suit and I look at the invitation. I think about the man who wore that other suit, the one who was too large, the one who was humiliated. He is gone. I destroyed him just as surely as I destroyed my aunt and uncle. The question is, who am I now? What is left? I have to decide if I will go to this wedding. I have to decide if the man I have become is capable of sitting at a celebration of love and feeling anything at all. I won the battle against my family, but I think I might have lost the war with myself. The hardest part of revenge is what comes after. It is the living with it. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with your own family? Tell me in the comments how it changed you. And if this story meant something to you, please like and subscribe. There are more records to explore.